And in Europe, markets whipsawed in the morning as investors reacted to news of a potentially effective coronavirus treatment while monitoring corporate earnings and economic data. Let's cross over now to Frankfurt. Chelsea is standing by to give us details. Hello, Chelsea. Good afternoon. Well, the European Central Bank has just announced its latest policy decision after ramping up stimulus in recent weeks to offset the impact of coronavirus. Did the Central Bank make any changes today, particularly with the Eurozone GDP contracting by a record 3.8% in the first quarter?
There were no major changes made by the ECB today. This wasn't a complete surprise. A lot of economists were expecting the European Central Bank to, at this meeting, take a little bit of a breather after they have, in the past few weeks, introduced a lot of new stimulus measures. But it still is coming off as a bit of a disappointment to investors, especially given how grim the European data has been over the past several days. If you can look behind me, you see that the DAX took a bit of a dive. It's down about 0.7% now. The ECB is saying that they're at this point not going to introduce any new stimulus measures, that they're not going to ramp up its bond buying program that it introduced last month, which is worth about 700 billion or 750 billion euros at this point. But they did say that they're going to be offering some new loan incentives for banks. And they also signaled that in the future, they could increase these stimulus programs depending on how the economy reacts. So they are indicating that they're willing to do more, but they're not ready to do it right now. But we're going to hear more on this throughout the course of this hour as the European Central Bank President, Christine Lagarde, holds a press conference. So investors are going to be watching that closely just for more signs of how willing the central bank is to increase its aid to the economy, given how bleak the data is.
Now, Germany says unemployment grew by more than 300,000 workers in April as coronavirus lockdowns brought the economy to a standstill. But how does this compare to unemployment in other countries?
Well, Germany is seeing an increase in unemployment, as you mentioned. About 300,000 workers filed for unemployment in April. That was a surprise. It was more than people thought it was going to be. But if you compare it to a country like the United States, it seems really like loose change. The United States has seen about 26 million people file for unemployment in April. That's likely to increase when the U.S. releases its new data today. That's going to be about 30 million or more. So in comparison, Germany has a much smaller increase in unemployment, but there's really a second story here, which is that Germany has this very highly praised short-time work scheme. So they subsidize wages for businesses that are facing trouble right now. So if you look at that number, it implies that around 10 million more workers here in Germany are facing job losses. So if you put that 10 million together with the overall unemployment rate, this is looking more like an unemployment rate around 20%. The U.S. is also likely to see an unemployment rate around 20%. So even here in Germany, where there is a very strong social safety net, there is a lot of damage being done to workers right now.
And Amazon is facing pressure in Europe from unions and politicians over its treatment of workers throughout the coronavirus pandemic. What kind of impact could this have on its businesses across the continent?
It's hard to say at this point. It is having an impact already. The test ground for these discussions has been France. So in France, Amazon has had to close its business there. They've temporarily shuttered it after a court last month decided that they were not ensuring safety for their workers in their warehouses. This has been a big topic of concern for Amazon workers all across the world. as they see a huge increase in orders, as they're really being relied on as a big source of deliveries and a way to get goods to people in quarantine. There's been a lot of concern that people working in warehouses and distribution facilities aren't being protected. So in France, this led to a court case where labor safety advocates had gone into the warehouses and seen conditions that they thought were unsafe for workers. A court ended up agreeing, and now Amazon either has to pay penalties or improve the conditions, and instead they decided to pull out. But it's not just France where we're seeing these fights play out. It's also happening here in Germany and in the US as well. So this is obviously a big concern for Amazon, who's been growing so fast, and they've really built this model of extremely fast growth and extremely fast delivery times. And now that workers are asserting their rights and are trying to negotiate more, this could become a bigger problem for them, and it could certainly slow down their growth. Or if they do face more court cases, if they face more regulatory challenges, that could certainly alter the outlook for them as a business.
Thank you, Chelsea. Enjoy the rest of the day.